This is Building a Creative Life. I'm Pam Vale, a New England artist, bringing the world of creativity to your door through casual conversations with artists, creators, and everyday people, helping curious, midlife women begin their next creative chapter. I'm glad you're here. Let's get started. Hello, creative friends. Before we talk about anything else, I just want to pause and say thank you. This year marked my very first year of hosting this podcast, and I don't take that lightly. If you've been listening for a while, if you've shared an episode or sent a note or even just quietly walked alongside me while you listened, I'm genuinely grateful. And if you're new here, welcome. I'm really glad you found your way. One of the things that surprised me most about doing this podcast is how much I learned along the way. I didn't start it because I had everything figured out. I started it because I was curious. And in many ways, I'm right here with you, still paying attention, still noticing, still learning, and still figuring out what it means to live creatively in real life. As we come to the end of the year, I thought it might be meaningful to look back, not to recap everything, but to reflect on some of the themes that kept showing up again and again, the threads that mattered, and the ideas that stayed with me. So I want to share a few of those with you. Think of this as a gentle flashback with a few things you might want to carry forward. Theme 1, living like an artist is a way of seeing. One of the most consistent ideas throughout this year has been the idea of living like an artist. Not necessarily making art, not producing, but seeing. This came up in conversations about travel and museums and creativity and everyday life. What I kept noticing is that artists tend to move through the world differently. They slow down. They notice details. They allow themselves to be affected by beauty, by texture, by color, by story. The lesson here isn't to do more, it's to see more. And a simple takeaway is wherever you are, practice noticing one thing you would normally rush past. That might be a building or a conversation, a pattern of the light, or even a feeling. Seeing is a creative act. Theme number 2, following the nudge. Another theme that showed up again and again was intuition, the nudge, that quiet sense of curiosity that doesn't always make logical sense. This came up in stories about creative pivots, career changes, travel decisions, and even small daily choices. And what I've learned is that creativity rarely announces itself loudly. It doesn't demand, it kind of invites us in. The people who seem most alive creatively weren't the ones with rigid plans. They were the ones willing to follow something small and unexpected. The takeaway here is simple. If something keeps tapping you on the shoulder, it's worth listening. You don't have to know where it leads. Curiosity is enough to begin. Theme 3, creativity without gatekeeping. This one is a big one for me. Over and over this year, we talked about creativity as something that belongs to everyone, not something reserved for professionals or people with credentials or people who started early. Creativity is not a club you have to be invited into. So many people have had their creative voice quieted by criticism, comparison, or the belief that they missed their chance. What I hope this podcast has made clear is that creativity isn't about talent or output. It's about expression, exploration, and connection. A takeaway to remember: you don't need permission to be creative. If something brings you alive, it already belongs to you. Theme 4, burnout, rest, and joy. This year also brought a lot of honest conversations about burnout. We talked about what happens when creativity turns into pressure, when productivity replaces pleasure, and when rest starts to feel like something we have to earn. What I learned is that rest isn't the opposite of creativity, it's part of it. Joy doesn't come from pushing harder, it comes from allowing space, from choosing rhythms that are sustainable, from remembering why you were drawn to creating in the first place. A gentle takeaway: if you feel tired, it doesn't mean you've failed. It might mean it's time to soften, slow down, or do something purely for pleasure again. Theme 5, storytelling and identity. Another thread that kept emerging was storytelling, not just in writing or art, but in how we understand ourselves. So many conversations circled back to identity, who we think we are, who we've been told we are, and who we're becoming. Creativity gives us a way to rewrite the story, or at least to question it. One of the most powerful things you can do is tell your own story with honesty and compassion, especially the messy parts, especially the chapters that don't look impressive on paper. The takeaway here, your story matters even if it's still unfolding, maybe especially if it's still unfolding. Theme 6, beauty, craft, and attention. And finally, beauty. Not beauty as decoration or perfection, but beauty as attention, as care, as choosing to do things well because it matters to you. This showed up in conversations about craft, handmade work, creative tools, and even how we move through places. Beauty asks us to be present and to engage and to care. A simple takeaway: where can you bring a little more care or attention into your own life? Often that's where creativity begins to re-enter. And as I close out this first year of the podcast, I want to say this clearly. I'm not here because I have all the answers. I'm here because I believe creativity is a vital, living part of being human. And because I've seen again and again what happens when people are given permission to return to it. If this podcast has helped you see yourself differently, notice more, or feel a little less alone in your creative life, then it's done what it was meant to do. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And thank you for being curious. And if you're wondering whether you belong in this conversation, you do. I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe for free and share it with a friend. It helps others find the show and grows our community. Remember, creativity is yours to define, there are no rules, and it's never too late. Until next time.